Okay, the kind of things I'd like to talk about, you know, I think I've mentioned this before, but luckily this is really on topic now. Maybe you guys will get why I think about these things. Our sense of vision, it's used as a dominant metaphor, source metaphor space, just in general, our modern urban dwelling nature. And I've done a lot of thinking about this and trying to get my other senses better, but basically I've discovered they remain incredibly crude compared to what I know the species is capable of and my ability to really train and even reach the height of my, potential. Right? But I have learned enough philosophically um, to make some conclusions about them, about our sense of balance and why it's good to have more sense of balance, and also that we have an imaginary body. Like I can imagine that my body, well, it's not just anticipatory. Like I can imagine picking something up on the desk and almost see myself doing it, and it's like there is this virtual potential image of a body that my brain can produce, like a cursor. It's to do somehow with the motor function. But also my hands are behind my back, out of my sight, and I have like a sort of a visual slash spatial concept of their configuration and the way that they are. And even if I woke up this way or somebody else moved my hand in position, I'd be able to detect it, though I have to say until you really flex and move it, you don't get as clear a high resolution picture of where your hands are when you can't see them. But you can get them, and if you're in a pitch black cave and you hold your hand in front and try and flex it and try to see it, you get something that feels like an image, and you know it's your brain creating it. And if you feel around and feel a rock, you can take that rock, you can put it in your other hand, all in the pitch black, you can put it down, and you can even move around a little bit, and if you keep a conception of it, you can go back and grab it, and that's how blind people evidently succeed with the spatial recognition. But for sighted people, what's interesting is we use this ability all the time. And we think of our visual space as visual, and in reality, it's already this weird correlated or abstract or some weird space that requires extra conversation. So, what I mean is this. For example, you come around to the vision you can have, right? Right out here, you can't lose sight. That's my peripheral vision, my most peripheral vision. This is pretty clearly feels like, 180 degrees. Okay. And then there's sort of a rim of darkness. It gets really dark right at the end, but then it just stops and it's not dark. I don't perceive darkness as behind me. I don't think or feel like there's darkness behind me. I feel like there's light. It's a void, though. I have no visual information, but I have the spatial information. Again, if my hand is behind my back, it's as if my imaginary eyes can spin around and look through my body down to where it is and see it. And that's the angle I imagine it from. As if my eyes were here looking down, and the way I see my palm extended, it's as if I'm seeing it from that side, from this point of view. Do you think about these things, you know, when you're thinking about these visual metaphors? Because look, I've looked far and wide. You have some philosopher that talks about the philosophical implications of peripheral vision. Please, I want the citation. I'd like a page number even, because I've searched far and wide. You got someone like that? And if you don't, I mean, why are you going to tell me that you're not going to engage with, what is this is sophisticated stuff. Can you recognize that? Or if you have your hand up here and suddenly you think it's not like that example that's where it's behind you, and you're imagining seeing it clearly, and you can't see it, so you can deduce that that must be an imagination. Well, when I have my hand up here to the side and I'm looking at the camera, uh, yeah, that imaginary clear picture there, and that isn't happening. You don't have, like, I could see my hand. You're not really looking at your hand. It's just a pattern of color. I spent a lot of time looking at a small mark, focusing, making sure my eyes stay on a mark, and moving things in my peripheral, various parts of my peripheral vision. See, what could I really see? Could I really count the number of fingers that were up? Things like that. No, you get no information. That's the whole point. There's really just this small circle, just like 3.5 degrees or 4 degrees, not much bigger than or minutes or whatever, actually. Not degrees, I forget. But anyway, it's a little bit bigger than the moon. It's not very big. That's what you can focus on. That's the little part that's high res color and does the parallax distance measuring. and it looks around a scene and it takes little tags, boom, 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 like a laser sight, finding out how far things are away, and then you rebuild it in your brain. Okay, I would like you to take those facts into account in all of your philosophy about perception and science and stuff, because this is why we have an inevitability of the fact that senses are mixed. That's part of the correlation process, right? All the senses come in as just okay, the color red, a feeling of heat, and so on, and they have to be built into this model. They're built into the same model. We build the idea of an object, and it's got red qualities, and it's got a rough texture, and it smells this way, and all of these senses, it's desirable because it's food or whatever. We have to do our work from within the framework of that. That's how it works. Right? That's the embodied mind issue right there, is that we can prove that we're doing this, that even when we talk about visual space and raw visual information, I have tried to look at things and realize that I'm reconstructing shitloads of color information in a huge portion, like 90% of my visual space. I'm reconstructing detailed information from detailed information collected by a little tiny circle that I can move around. I can't see the little circle with black and white around it, no matter how hard I try. Okay? But I know from an analysis of the anatomy of the eye that this is what I'm getting. So that's the point. We don't have raw visual information to talk about. Okay? Now, if you have the book that's going to explain that and has your opinion on those subjects, be specific, because I look far and wide. I'm not ill-read. The closest I found is the work of Lakoff that is structuring sort of the foundations of this idea, this ancient relativistic idea, with scientific results, which I think have to be paid attention to by me. I mean, do you have comments on that? What are the philosophical implications of how peripheral vision feels? But then again, who's capable of having this conversation with me? I spent decades wondering how optical illusions look, practicing switching some, back and forth, like the vase and the two faces. Can you see the face? Okay, have somebody say face, 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 face. See if you could go back and forth and see that one. Can you? Because you can control. The mind can control through its interpretation. This tells us a lot about what's going on in general. Turns out everything is an optical illusion. Nothing is as we thought it is, because we think it's this three-dimensional solid space with all of our senses correlated together. Visual is visual and sound is sound, and reality, no. Visual is this weird complex thing with an eye that has to be moving. We seem to think of it as a static thing that we're moving in. We perceive the world as something we're moving in, but we know from the way cameras work, when you shake a camera, the world appears to move. We correlate that all back, so we go, no, we're moving. And then you want to act like there's some direct, idea of senses. And see, in this scenario I present, the question of visual dominance, do you see how it has changed? Visual dominance. That just means that the model we have inside is largely correlated to visual space, probably because it's a highly accurate space. It's a good measurement space. Things remain consistent. They appear consistent in it compared to the other senses for us. And they have lots of spatial consistency. But everything else is filled into the same model. And the model was built, theoretically, its original origins go back probably before we even had eyes. So it's got other fundaments in it. And that's very interesting, because when we had purely chemical sensation, so it's like a quality-based sense system, very interesting and somewhat arbitrary seeming. And that's actually got to be at the fundament of how we perceive things. And now science is the way of constructing this model based on material facts. That's my position. And I hope you see how that relates to the things you actually appeared to talk about in your discussion with Professor Anton. And I also hope that if you feel any of this is critical, that you realize I consider it constructive criticism. It's not like I just blurt this out right away, but um, it's part of my feedback, and also that I would love to talk about this subject to somebody that understands it even is a subject. So you seem to be realizing it's a subject.